All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's open forum. Today we have a very hopefully helpful uh, inspection playbook for you. The inspection period playbook. This is you get a property under contract. Congratulations. Either you represent the buyer or the seller. And now we've got a contract for this thing. The most likely time for any contract to fall apart, of course, is during the inspection period. Um, this is all based on the as is contract. I did this completely based on the as is, so you're not going to see a lot of back and forth stuff like you see in the standard contract. Of course, we haven't. I don't think you guys have used a standard contract maybe once a year in the last 5 years. So everything's on the as is. When you do an as is, everything is negotiable. Everything is during that first time. Sellers don't understand that. That needs to be explained to them. They think they're selling the house as is. They walk away, and sometimes they take a price that they think, okay, this is for me not having to fix anything or do anything. It's an as is contract. That's where we have to educate them. Educate the sellers, educate the buyers. Buyers a lot of times get scared when they see an as is. So whatever this is, if I sign this contract, I have to buy it. No, you get to inspect, you get to come back, and if you want some repairs made or you want whatever, you can ask for them. You're not entitled to anything. The seller does not have to perform anything. A lot of times you guys have had sellers and a seller will say, yeah, but this is the bottom line. I'm not breaking any more than this. I wanted 480 for the house and they offered 460 and we got to 465, but I'll take 465, but we're not going anymore. We're not doing anything else for them. Okay. And that's fine. You just have to hope the inspection goes well and we can figure that out from there. So a lot of deals fall apart because of that, because then the buyer wants some repairs made and the seller says, we've already come down 15 grand. That's perfectly fine. A lot of times that works out. Don't lose your cool during this. And we're going to go over all this stuff. The agent has to remain calm, control everything, negotiate things, educate your client, etc. So let's go through this. The inspection period playbook, how to protect your clients, control the timeline, negotiate smarter, and keep more deals together after the inspection report arrives. What this playbook helps you to do. The inspection period is not a contingency. It's not just a contingency. It's one of the most important deal management windows in the entire transaction. And by that, a lot of people go into contract knowing that they might try to renegotiate during the inspection period. This is all deal management stuff. And I have a particular disdain. I do not like when agents tell their clients, oh yeah, we'll agree to their price now, but we'll beat them up during the inspection. That is asking for deals to fall apart. That is asking to waste time. Let's not do that. All right, protect the buyer. Make sure the buyer understands timing, risk, inspection options, insurance concerns, and the difference between asking for repairs and preserving cancellation rights. Guide the seller if you're on the other side. Help sellers respond strategically instead of emotionally. The goal is not to win the inspection. The goal is to keep leverage and keep the deal alive. A lot of times sellers take things very personally, and so they get emotional. What do you mean my house isn't perfect? I raised my kids here. I love this house. I don't even want to move. I just have to move. What do you mean my house is got all these things wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with that. So you're going to help them, and we're going to get into this a little bit. Determine what's a real thing and what's cosmetic. And the buyers need to know too. Buyer, you don't get to, you've all had people, if you have a listing, a buyer will send you the whole inspection report and just send it to you with nothing, not saying anything. Not saying, well, what do you want? Tell us what you want, make it clear and concise what you're asking for if you're the buyer's representative. So I can take this to my seller and hopefully get this whole thing resolved. Maybe give you most or all of what you want, but you have to tell me what you want. You have to actually ask for things. And then controlling the timeline. Deadlines, written notices, report review, vendor estimates, negotiations, and addenda all need to happen before the clock runs out. Do not get to the last minute and ask for everything at 7 o'clock on closing on the last day of the inspection period. The agent who manages this period well usually prevents surprises, reduces emotion, and creates better outcomes for everyone. Obviously, you get the deal done. I've seen deals fall apart for, broken outlet covers, and I've seen deals stay together when it needs a new roof and new AC and everything else. So things happen. You've got to manage it. You've got to reduce emotion, take emotions out of it. All right. The inspection period mindset. The goal is not to turn every inspection into a fight. The goal is to help a client make a clear decision with good information. And it's okay if a deal falls apart. If you represent the buyer and a deal falls apart, or if you represent the seller and a buyer backs out, that's okay. It's going to happen. It happens. you got to separate clarity before emotion, separate safety, function, insurance issues from cosmetic preferences. And this is a big deal. Do not let a 60-page report feel like a 60-problem house. That is usually not the case, obviously. Strategy before request. Decide what matters most before asking for everything. A strong request is specific, reasonable, and supported by the report. I'm going to get back to that in a second. And deadlines before drama. The clock is always running. Build a timeline immediately. Verbal conversations do not protect the clients. Written notices and signed addenda do. That's obviously very important. And that's what I always tell you guys if you ask me what you should do. The thing's running out. I haven't heard from them in 2 days. We told them we wanted some repairs and they haven't responded. Well, we have to deal with those specifically, but a lot of times it's important to let them know we intend to, if I don't hear back from you, this is my written notice that we're going to cancel. So there you go. All right. Let's go back to number 2. Decide what matters most before asking for everything. A strong request is specific, reasonable, and supported by the report. That, as a listing agent, getting these from the buyer's agent, please be specific. Use logic and reason what you want. I've also had buyer's agents tell me, look, these people are not reasonable. They're gonna, they want everything fixed, and if they don't get it, they're not gonna close a deal. And she or he will even say, look, I know the seller's not gonna do this, whatever. That's fine. If that's the case, that's the way it is. But come up with a reasonable thing. And so what I'll tell that agent is, that's fine. Send me your request. Send me your repair request. An addendum for requested repairs, and send me a cancellation, and I'll let the seller sign whichever one. Right. So you better. But if you're doing this and you're dealing with someone like me, you better come in with a reasonable request. Because sometimes the seller I'll just have the seller reply with it. If it's an unreasonable request, I'll just have the seller send a cancellation instead of even replying to it. So because you've got to take emotion out of this and just take it as a real business transaction. And a lot of agents get caught up. Look, you've become good friends with your buyers. Your seller was probably already your friend, somebody from your sphere, right? Most of the time. But your friends, you become friends with your buyers if you didn't know them already. They might be a friend or a family member. And you've become friends, and you've looked at a bunch of houses together, and you're really emotionally attached to this client because you want them to get what they want. You finally got them under contract. You're excited for them. They're excited. They get the report back, and it's got some stuff on it, which they're all going to. And sometimes you get a little emotional, and you need to be realistic about what they can get and what they really need. So be sure to be able to specify, like the top one says, safety, function, insurance issues, general repairs from cosmetic preferences. Okay, the simple timeline. Contract effective date, the inspections ordered, report reviewed, request or cancel, negotiate addendum, deadline protected. That's all in the 5, 7, 10, 15 days, whatever you have for an inspection period. Best practices, put the inspection deadline on your calendar immediately and set reminders before the deadline, not at the deadline. Your client needs enough time to inspect, review, estimate, negotiate, and still preserve their contractual options. I will tell you, you guys have not had huge problems with this. For some of you who are newer, be sure you're paying attention to your inspection timeline. These are timelines I'm not that worried about you guys on. You guys do a pretty good job on this. First of all, it's a new deal. It's got typically 5, 7, 10 days, and you guys are on the ball. It's easy. There's constant attention on it. Inspections are ordered, inspections ordered. Usually they're out there within 2 or 3 days. You get the report the next day. You go over it with the buyer the next day, and this thing is done and you're fine. I worry more about you guys' deadlines on other things related to the financing contingency, but that's another time. But you guys do a pretty good job with this, but just make sure you stay on top of it. And make sure you don't get to this last day. I do get you guys do that sometimes, you get to the last day, but a lot of times it's because you made this step 4. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. Step 4, you guys get there and you make that request. Reasonable or not, doesn't matter because they don't respond for a couple of days, and you guys get nervous and you call me and ask what to do, which is perfectly fine. You should be nervous and you should act. You should let them know, by the way, we intend to cancel if you guys don't respond to this, or if you respond favorably to this. Okay. So that way they can't come back and say, oh, we were still negotiating and your deadline ran past. That's not the case. And they're not going to win with that anyway, in any kind of arbitration, but they will fight you for the deposit. Okay. Before the inspection is even scheduled, Explain what the report is. An inspection report is not a repair list. This is educating your buyers. It is information that helps the buyer decide whether to proceed, renegotiate, or cancel. Explain it to your sellers too. A inspection report is not a repair list. That's the most important thing. Set the buyer's expectations. Every home has issues, and tell the seller this too. Older homes will have more issues. New construction will still have issues. The question is, what matters enough to affect the purchase? Is this still worth buying? And we're going to get into concessions and price drops and stuff like that in a minute. Confirm the inspection deadline and the last safe time to act. Recommend qualified inspectors and keep documentation. Tell the client they can choose whomever they want in writing. In writing. We just had one of these where the buyer didn't know the area, so he asked his agent, one of our agents, to get an inspector. And the agent, who does a lot of business and does a lot of business with the same inspector, because he also does his own portfolio of investments, so he hired the same inspector he always hired, right? Well, he had the buyer hire that inspector. Turns out the buyer is not a very reasonable person anyway, but turns out they're mad about the inspection, and they're accusing us of being in cahoots with the inspector to get them to buy this not very expensive property. The whole thing is ridiculous, but that's where we're at. And all because and it's not the first time. I see this once a year. So there's always problems. I wouldn't want to be an inspector. They get sued all the time for not telling me about this and not telling me about that, stuff they didn't know about. So, and in this case, it's really ridiculous. The inspector is a good inspector. I actually know the guy, very good inspector, but don't pick them. Let them pick them. Let them know, look, here's some that we work with. We have those of you who don't know, on Paperless Pipeline, there is a recommended vendors list. And you can use those names, and then tell them they can Google anybody else they want to. These are people we worked with before, and they've done a good job. But if you want to pick someone else, please do. And you can even let them know, we can't be responsible for picking your inspection. In case you don't like something later, you can't say that we guided you there. Encourage the buyer to attend if possible and ask questions. I always agree with that 100%. Let the buyer, if they have time, go to the inspection and ask questions. Remind the buyer to check insurance, roof age, permits, HOA condo rules, flood zone, and utilities during the same window. If you want to create a checklist for your buyers or have AI do it in about 2 seconds, you can do that. I would like to have that in your buying package. I think that's great. You're giving them all that stuff, but it is not your job to do all this stuff. It is their job. We talk about this a lot when we talk about selling lots to people who want to build custom homes. We talk about letting them do the work. This is not your job. It's too important for you to do this, actually. They should be doing it themselves. You do not want the liability of doing this. And it's sad that we live in such a litigious, everybody wants to sue for everything society, that we can't do some of this stuff, but have them do it. It's much better. If you can give them straight things, if you want to request HOA docs or whatever for them, just have them emailed to them. They look over them and decide whether or not they want to buy this house. If they want your guide through it, then you can help guide them, but they make these decisions. Avoid promising repair outcomes before the seller responds in writing. Absolutely. I will have a buyer, and I'll call Tammy and say, Tammy, the buyer would like the seller to fix this. I'm going to send over an addendum. Oh yeah, that'll be no problem. They were already talking about doing that. I don't think that'll be a problem. That's great. That's all they want. Yeah, that's all they want. Okay, that won't be a problem. And then it is a problem because the seller had a bad day, or they're saying, it was one thing when I said my walls were ugly and worn down. It's another thing when the buyer says that, right? Because we get emotional about that stuff. What do you mean they want my kids' rooms repainted? This is where my kids grew up. The walls are beautiful. This is, whatever, right? So, and Tammy said, oh, that won't be a problem, repainting some rooms. And then, what happens? Either Tammy ends up paying for it or the deal falls apart, okay? Seller preparation before the inspection. Seller offer here, inspection, immediately think they're going to ask me for everything. Your job is to reduce defensiveness before it starts. This is very, very important. Talk to your seller before the inspection. Guys, communicate with your clients. Not everybody. One of the things we do is projection. It's a common human nature thing we do, is we project our values and our way we think on other people, on our clients. First of all, personalities are all very different. Second of all, experiences are all very different. They don't know about everything we know about real estate. And sometimes we just assume they do. Sometimes we assume they know what an inspection does and what they look at and what they're going to come back with. And they haven't had an inspection in 7 years when they bought this house, or 12 years or 5 years, or whenever they bought this house. that's the last time they got an inspection. They don't really remember everything about it. They don't, and maybe they ask for, maybe they're the kind of people that ask for everything. So they think the buyers are too, or maybe they're the kind of people that ask for nothing. And so they think the buyers are the same or same laid back kind of people. Usually they're not the same kind of people. So coach your seller, coach your buyers. Tell the seller, do not take report personally. The buyer paid for information. Their request is a negotiation, not an insult, right? Utilities on, prepare the property, clear access to attic, electrical panel, water heater, HVAC, pool accessible, pet secured, receipts or permits available. So you're not going to have all that stuff, obviously, but you can make everything open for them to do it. And the problem with this is, if the utilities aren't on, the water wasn't on, whatever, a lot of times in vacant houses, that's the case. Inspector goes out, he has to come back. Everybody's agitated, and it pushes the limit on your 5 or 7 or 10 day inspection. I've seen people fight for, I'm not giving you 15 days, I'll give you 7 days for inspection, and then the house isn't ready. The utilities aren't on, all that stuff. So don't do that. I've been part of that, unfortunately. Maintain leverage, respond calmly, avoid oversharing, do not agree verbally, and let the written addendum control the final agreement. Well, the written addendum does control the final agreement, but make sure it's right, and be calm. I've seen you guys get so worked up, not just you guys, other agents for other companies fighting with you guys, and everybody's all worked up and everybody's all, ready to fight about everything. Look, it's just leverage. It's just negotiation. It's just a property. It's just a house. I know we get involved. Your seller gets involved emotionally. Your buyer gets involved emotionally. It's just a house. Let's wait to see. Here's a good script for the seller. Let's wait to see what the actual report and request is. Once we know what they're asking for, we can separate the serious items from the smaller items and respond strategically. And that's when we'll get into explaining to them, you don't have to repair everything. A lot of times you can do concessions, or you can just reject sometimes. We're going to get into that in a minute. All right, how to read the inspection report. Priority 1, safety, function, insurance, financing, things that have to be done because they can't do it. Electrical panels that are bad, roofs that are old, etc. You guys know what that stuff is. Polybutylene piping, etc. Those are like the main ones. Roof leaks, active plumbing leaks, electrical hazards, HVAC failure. The AC doesn't work. They're not closing like that. Structural, especially if it's, an FHA, VA, we'll get in that a little bit too. HVAC failure, structural concerns, wood rot, wood destroying organisms, mold, moisture, pool safety. You guys know about all this stuff. Insurance blockers like electrical panels, etc. Maybe requests. Appliances not working, minor plumbing repairs, replacing outlets, garage door issues, window issues, settlement cracks needing evaluation. If you're in Florida and they start asking for settlement cracks being repaired and stuff like that, good luck with that. It's going to settle more. I got news for you. And every house in Florida has settlement cracks. If not, it will soon. If not, it's brand new and it will soon. Usually not worth a fight. Paint touch-ups, older but functioning systems, cosmetic cracks. For example, your water heater is 12 years old. Well, I recently had a property with it was built in 1969 and it had the original water heater. Minor wear and tear. Preferences the buyer notice after the contract. Do not send a seller a panic list. Send a strategy. So how many times have you guys gotten a repair request from a buyer and it's as long as your arm and you don't even want to present it to your seller? That's where you should have properly coached them up before to let them know this and let them know, look, some buyers will send one thing, some buyers will send none, some buyers will send 50 things. Occasionally 1%, 2% of buyers won't even have an inspection. So there you go. The buyer decision tree. What do we learn when we review the report, speak with inspectors, vendors, and identify major issues? What did we learn from the inspection? What does the buyer want? To proceed as is, to request repairs, request credit or price reduction, or cancel? What is the deadline? Make sure the buyer's decision is made before the inspection period expires. Of course, it needs to be well before that because you have to request these things and get answers. The buyer should not be deciding at 7 p.m. on the deadline day. Build in time for review, negotiation, and written notice. Okay, so let's go back to number 2. What does the buyer want? Proceed as is, request repairs, request credit, price reduction, or cancel. Make sure you guys know how to request things and coach your buyer on what to request. For example, representing a seller, I'll get a list for a bunch of repairs that need to be made by a licensed and insured repairman. And look, guys, if it's replacing outlets and doing all that kind of stuff, it doesn't need to be done. It needs to be done by a handyman. It needs to be whatever. Don't make things harder than they need to be just because you heard somebody fancy say licensed and insured professional. Some things need to be by a licensed and insured professional. If I'm going to replace the electrical box, yeah, but not if I'm replacing outlet covers. And I've seen outlet cover. Please replace outlet covers by a licensed and professional, a licensed and insured professional. Get out of here. I can do it. I've done it for listings. Obviously, we all have, right? So that kind of stuff is ridiculous, and it just creates barriers. No, act like you know how the world works. Act like you've been in a house before. Act like you've done a real estate deal before, and know what to request for a repair by a licensed and insured professional, and what's just a handyman thing. Replacing the dishwasher does not need to be replaced by a licensed and insured. I've replaced dishwashers. Everybody can do typical stuff. I've replaced water heaters. It's not hard. It doesn't need to be done by a licensed and insured plumber. Okay. So stop being like that. Just say, I want a new water heater installed. That's it. But when you do that, I prefer almost always my preference to get a credit. Let the buyer handle it. Half the time the buyer, when they get a lot of times they ask for credit, they know they're not going to fix it right away. They're going to fix it in 3 years, but they want cash, right? Everybody wants a credit. Everybody wants more cash. They probably struggled, a lot of them, to get the down payment, right? We've all seen that. So they want some cash back. They want to bring less money to closing. That's great for them. That's all they're going to use it for, probably. And that's perfectly fine. They're never going to replace the dishwasher probably until it breaks, right? So it's just old, or the hot water heater is just old. They're not going to replace it right away. So they want, $800 or $1,200 for that, or $2,500, whatever they want. If the seller agrees to it, great. I always tell the seller, I don't want you to have to hire a licensed and insured professional to do this, or this. And then it'll say to the buyer's satisfaction. What is that moving target? So we're going to replace this thing and they're not going to like it? Absolutely not. Let's do a concession, right? And usually a concession is a little less than what it actually costs. And this, for the seller, you're avoiding any surprises, whatever they find back there after closing, right? You're avoiding all kinds of stuff, all kinds of risk of making the repair, and then the buyer backs out at the last minute. Buyer gets whatever, right? So I would that's a huge thing too. Buyer gets declined at the last minute. Now we've made these repairs that the next buyer may not even have said anything about or needed, right? So I love credits. Love concessions and credits. Let's try to do that as much as we can. It's better for absolutely everybody, typically. Okay. And the buyer can ask for absolutely anything. The seller doesn't have to agree to it. I've had buyers ask me, what can we ask for during this? You can ask for everything. You ask them to build you another room on top of the house if you want. They're not going to do it, right? They don't have to do anything. So whatever they agree to is fine. I've also seen addendums where the buyer will pay half of something. They'll offer to give the seller half of something for the seller to go ahead and do it because they need it before closing. And the seller doesn't want to make a repair because the seller will say, if this weren't an FHA deal, I wouldn't have to do this. So the buyer will say, well, if we raise the price an extra, fit into the appraisal, if I give you another $1,000, will you go ahead and do this for us? And the seller will say, yeah. I've seen the seller doesn't even contribute. They just make the repair out with the buyer's money. So there's things that can be done like that. Writing a strong repair or credit request. A weak request says fix everything. Obviously, that's not getting presented to anybody that I know. A strong request says, here are the issues that materially affect this purchase, supported by the report. That's not actually on the addendum, by the way. That's just what they're going to tell you in the email attached to the addendum. But be specific. Identify the item, location, and problem. Reference the inspection report page when helpful, which would be always helpful, unless they already knew that the air conditioner is broken or whatever. But even then, you're going to want to reference the inspection report page. Be real. Do not just send someone an inspection report. Sellers don't want the inspection report unless you're asking for a specific thing. I've also had you guys, not you guys, other people ask you. You guys have said they're asking for repairs, but they refuse to supply the report. And they say it's their buyer's property and they don't need to supply. Like, well, if you want something, you better, right? You don't have to. You don't ever have to send me the report, but my seller's not agreeing to anything unless they see it on the report. So no, your buyer can keep the report all they want and never show it to anybody. But if they're going to ask for something on there, my seller would like to see the report. Ask for what matters. Padding the request with small items can weaken the serious items. For example, look, you buy a house and you move in the first day. On the second day, you go to Lowe's and you get your own outlet covers and you do it yourself with a screwdriver. Don't clog up real issues with that kind of stuff, because what that does, sellers are already emotional. What you're telling them is, we want this house perfect, right? I have cracked in my house. I have cracked outlet covers and they've been cracked the whole time I've lived here for 5 years. I mean, if I haven't fixed it yet, don't come in and ask me to fix it for you. Be clean. Use clear terms in the addendum. Avoid vague language like repair all issues. That's not happening anyway. Better structure. Ask for a licensed professional where appropriate. State only where appropriate. State whether the buyer wants repair, credit, price reduction, or combination, and the seller can, and if I'm their agent, they're going to counter that with let's just do concessions. Require paid receipts before closing if repairs are agreed. That's obvious. A lot of people want to be re-inspected. That's fine too. Depends on the repair, obviously. Avoid asking sellers to perform specialized repairs without clear standards. So let's say a paid receipt, you ask for the dishwasher to be fixed and replaced or whatever, and they do that. Or they have the repair guy come out and fix the refrigerator and give you and provide you with the paid invoice, the receipt for it. That's fine. Okay, credit versus repairs versus price reduction. Seller repairs can solve the issue before closing, but may create quality, timing, and reinspection problems. That's what I was talking about. To buyers, the word to buyer satisfaction, I will never allow that my seller to sign something that says to buyer satisfaction, because that is the most moving target I've ever seen. That's absolutely no. That's in the buyer's sole discretion, and that's not right. Just say repair. And if it should be by a licensed and insured professional, like a panel, electrical panel, then so be it. That's fine. And I'll provide you with the receipt that work was done by a licensed professional. And that's all you need. Seller credit, often cleaner and faster, but lender rules and closing cost limits may affect what is allowed. Very, very seldom, but check with the lender first to make sure. You'll know if they're not getting 3% back already, that they're going to be fine. Price reduction changes the purchase price, but may not help the buyer's cash needed for immediate repairs. Yeah, price reduction doesn't help much unless it's a cash deal, something like that. I've seen price reductions for that. Seller likes price reductions a little bit, saves them a few dollars on commission, but typically seller credits are better because it gives the buyer cash to make the repairs. Questions to ask before choosing. Does the buyer need cash to complete the repair after closing? Will the lender allow the credit as written? Is a repair urgent, insurable, or required before closing? And we're getting into, now some of those are going to be insurance things like the electrical panel, like the poly, like the roof, etc. And some of them are going to be FHA, VA stuff. Can a licensed contractor complete it before closing? Can it even be done? And will the buyer trust the seller's repair quality? That's what we're getting into with the credits. Always coordinate credit and repair language with the lender, title and closing team, and broker when needed. We don't need to, but some brokers will. Some brokerages, if you're not 100%, will have to approve any price reduction based on repairs. Seller response framework. A seller response should be strategic, not emotional. You're helping the seller weigh cost, risk, time, and leverage. All right, they're going to accept it. Good for clear, reasonable items that protect the closing and are not worth risking the deal over. They can counter it, offer a credit, a partial repair, an alternative that solves the buyer's main concern. They can reject it. Appropriate when the request is unreasonable, cosmetic, unsupported, or already reflected in the price. Look, we already lowered the price because we know the house is dated. Don't come in here and tell me, it's dated. Don't come in here. I told you the appliances aren't working great, and I took money off of that. Don't come in and tell me to replace the appliances after we discuss this. Okay. Oh, sorry. Clarify. Ask for report pages, estimates, photos, or scope before agreeing to a vague or expensive request. You'll see a lot of AC servicing, AC this, AC that. The AC wasn't cooling fast enough. But let me see specific stuff on that before I do that. You know what I mean? Or what do you really want? Do you really want $500? Is that what you're asking for? You know what I mean? So let's talk about that. I'll give you if I don't want to deal with it and I'm the seller, I might give you $500 or just you deal with the AC servicing or whatever. I don't want to get involved in that. The best response is one that preserves the seller's goals while still giving the buyer a reason to move forward. Buyer script. So here's some scripts, some tough conversations. Let's not treat the retire report as a repair list. Let's identify the items that affect safety, function, insurance, and your willingness to move forward. You'll get that a lot. They'll say, oh, I want the house perfect. Well, it's not a new home. And as we know, new homes aren't always perfect, but it's not a new home. Another one, before we ask for anything, let's decide your outcome. Do you want repairs, a credit, a price reduction, or are you no longer comfortable with the house? So let's not waste time on this if you're not comfortable with the house. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm comfortable with it if they do everything. And then that's where we didn't do a good enough job setting we didn't do a good enough job educating them on what we were looking for when we were looking at houses. And in that case, that's your thing. You know what? Let's go down to the Lennar community down the street, or the Pulte, or the whatever down the street, right? And talk to them about buying, because if you're not, after a while, if you get to where they just want everything repaired, then they need a new house. Seller script. This is a negotiation. We do not need to agree to everything, but we do need to decide what's worth doing to keep the transaction together, if that's what we want to do. And the other one, let's separate the serious issues from the cosmetic ones and respond in a way that protects your bottom line and the closing. Again, these only work, both these buyer and seller ones, if you educated them a little bit up front. You told them what to expect. All right. And then otherwise you end up having that conversation now, and that's a lot to process for them. All right. My buyers are still agent to agent. My buyers are still interested in moving forward. These are the items that prevented them from feeling comfortable, and we're trying to find a workable solution. Okay. Don't get, I see you guys all the time get too emotional. Not you guys being realtors in general, get too emotional over repairs and requests. And you get offended for your seller, sometimes more offended than your seller is going to be. I have seen it, and you guys will talk to me about it and say, not just you guys, it's the other agents too. You guys will talk to me about it and say how upset you are. And I'll say, well, what did the seller say? Well, the seller's okay with it. Like, well, then get out of the way. Let people make a deal. All right. Common inspection items that can change the deal. Roof age, active leaks, insurance eligibility, remaining life concerns, HVAC. You guys know all this stuff. I'm not going to go through this. That's why I gave this to you, so you can have all that. Report rarely kills the deal by itself. This is a huge thing here. That's why I've got it big over here and bolded. Report rarely kills the deal by itself. I mean, once in a while, you'll be like, oh, this used to be on a sinkhole. Okay, great. Sinkhole starting back here. Okay, let's get off the property. But it rarely kills the deal by itself. Confusion, surprise, bad timing, poor communication, and this is the educating your client, are what usually kills the deal. Poor communication, getting upset, letting your clients get upset. That's the biggest thing. You guys, your job is to make the next decision clear. Your job is to make it where they won't be upset. And they're going to get upset sometimes, but they won't be upset if they are properly, most of the time, if they are properly educated. Insurance, lender, and closing team issues. I can't tell you, I'm going to stop for a second. I can't tell you guys how many friends of mine and people that I know who do lots of deals, perfectly good business people who do lots of stuff in their real life and even have bought and sold lots of houses, don't understand this stuff exactly. They don't understand the as is exactly. I've had people a guy who does, I wouldn't say he does flips, but he does buy and holds and then sells them and stuff. He doesn't understand how this works. He's asking me questions about, I'm like, are you sure you've ever bought a house before? Or used an as is before? And he has. Some inspection findings are not just repair items. They may affect insurance, financing, closing timing, or whether the buyer can move forward at all. Insurance, we talked about this. Flood zone stuff, prior claims can affect availability or cost. Lender, credits must be structured correctly. Some repair requirements may need completion before closing, depending on the loan type and property condition. Title and closing, open permits, unpaid work, liens, or documentation issues may need more time and coordination. A strong agent asks early, who else needs to weigh in before my client makes a final decision? Cancellation conversation. In our as is, the buyer's inspection period gives them a negotiated window to inspect and decide. If the buyer wants to cancel, written notice must be delivered before the inspection period expires. Always follow the current contract language and broker legal guidance, of course. Do not wait. If the buyer is leaning toward cancellation, address it immediately. Waiting till the last hour creates avoidable risk. Yes, you guys have intended to cancel, and for whatever reason did not do it in time, and it has been a problem. Use written notice. A conversation text, or they know they know we are unhappy, is not a clear, clean cancellation strategy. Written notice matters. Everything in writing. Confirm receipt. Document delivery. Confirm receipt when possible, and involve your broker or closing team if there is any uncertainty. Only involve us if there's a problem, but confirm receipt when possible. Document your delivery. Obviously, you're doing it by email. Try to not do things by text. Important things. Agents should not give legal advice. When the issue is legal, refer the client to the appropriate professional. You guys know that. That includes tax professionals and legal professionals and title professionals. After the inspection period expired, for example, someone asks you, should I do this as a joint tenants in common, or should I do this as what? And should I do a ladybird deed? Should I do? Just ask the title. Ask a lawyer in the title company, and they'll guide you. That's not within our purview of legal stuff. Okay. Once the inspection period expires without timely cancellation, the buyer's easy inspection-based exit is generally gone under the as-is framework. The deal moves from decision window to contract performance, meaning if they do get out for some other reason of this contract, obviously they probably won't want to, but if they do, it'll be because failure to get financing, it'll be because something like that. They will need to be rejected by something else. It'll have to be contract performance. Buyer risk increases. A buyer may still have other contingencies, but inspection dissatisfaction is no longer the same leverage point. So they've agreed to that the house is in okay shape with whatever we've agreed to for concessions or whatever we've agreed to for repairs. And it may be nothing, or it may be tons of stuff. So it's not done. Also, this stuff has to be done before closing. So if we agree to repairs, it has to be done before closing. You can still get out for that if they don't do it. But we've agreed to the terms. The seller may be less likely to renegotiate after the deadline unless the issues affect closing or were newly discovered, of course. Documentation matters. If repairs, credits, or concessions were agreed to, they need to be in writing and signed properly. You guys know that. That doesn't seem to be a big deal, a big problem. The deadline is not a suggestion, it's a leverage line. Okay, deal-saving negotiation habits. Lead with the outcome. My client wants to move forward if we can resolve these items. Keep the list tight. A shorter, better supported request usually gets more traction than a long list of minor items. That's what I was talking to you about before earlier. Don't confuse the important stuff. Don't irritate the situation with the seller with a bunch of nonsense stuff that you can even offer yourself, look, guys, I'll go out there and replace the things at closing. The day before closing, we do our walkthrough. I'll bring a bunch of outlet covers. I'll do this, I'll do that, right? If it's that easy. Use estimates wisely. Estimates create reality. Guessing creates arguments. I have seen, just for example, I've seen light bulbs on here. Bulbs are out here. People ask for repairs because light bulbs were burned out. Use estimates wisely. Estimates create reality. Guessing creates arguments. Absolutely right. If you're asking for something, know what it costs, and that way you can know what to ask for. So don't ask, for example, for $3,000 for a new dishwasher. Make it reasonable. Leave room to say yes. A buyer demand that humiliates the seller can make a solvable issue harder to solve. That's keeping emotions out of it. Do not negotiate against yourself. Present the request clearly, then let the other side respond. I see that all the time with you guys and other people. Document the final deal. If it matters, it belongs in an addendum. That's why I put this in bold. If it matters, it belongs in an addendum. Do not just say, oh, they told us they would do that, right? Tone matters. The same request can sound reasonable or ridiculous depending on how it is framed. If you guys don't know that, then you've never lived a day in your life of anything. If you have kids, if you have any kind of relationship with anyone, friends, anyone, then you know that tone matters. And the same request can sound reasonable or ridiculous. Comment. So that's where you need to keep a calm, cool, professional head. That was the point. Common agent mistakes during the inspection period. Waiting too long to order inspections. That's ridiculous. You shouldn't be doing that. Letting the buyer panic over every item in the report. Should have informed them beforehand what to expect. Sending their full report with no strategy or explanation. This is not you guys, but this is common for other people out there. Asking for everything and weakening the serious items. That's what we were just talking about. Agreeing verbally to repairs or credits. No, some of you guys have had it under contract before. This is your second contract with it. And the first time the seller was willing to do $2,500 toward this or that, right? And you get this one and you go to the seller and the seller says, no. My bottom, that's because they were paying a little bit more in my bottom line. I was already giving them I wasn't giving them a credit at closing, and now I am giving a credit at closing. So my bottom line is affected by it. And you need to be aware of all that stuff and never agree to anything. Say, the seller may agree to that. I'll let them know, and let's see where we can get from there, right? Not, oh yeah, seller, they've agreed to that before. I know they'll do that, right? Don't agree to anything for the seller. That agent's going to call their buyer right away, or that when the buyer talks to them the next time, they're going to say, oh yeah, that won't be a problem. And then it is a problem. And then everybody seems unreasonable. The seller changed their mind, which the seller never even changed their mind. Seller never knew. All right. Forgetting to involve the lender on credits. You guys have to have a feel for that. You have to know how much credit your buyer can get on things. If they're already getting 4% or whatever, it might be an issue. If they're already getting 3%, it might be an issue. Or if they're trying to get a new roof, and the new roof is 75 grand because it's one of the slate tile roofs or whatever, then that might be an issue. But just make sure that you're on top of that. For I'm not usually talking to the lender about credits. I usually know. I have a feel that, look, we're getting $5,000 in credits. We didn't get any seller credits up front. We're going to be fine. Missing the inspection deadline or assuming negotiation extends it. It does not extend it. Just because we're talking about it does not extend it. When you send that over and you're going back and forth, and it's on that last day, and it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon on the last day, and you send that thing over and you think you've agreed to everything, send the inspection, send the extension of the inspection period addendum with it. There's an extension addendum for the as-is contract. It has a bunch of little check marks for extending this date, that date, this date, that date. Click the one for inspection period and put it back a couple of days and send that with it. And let them know, we're extending the inspection period. If we can't get this done, then we're not going to go forward. Giving legal, construction, insurance, or repair advice beyond your role. If you don't know stuff, you don't say, oh yeah, we can get this kitchen redone for $4,000. Don't give it stuff like that. Let them get an estimate. And certainly not insurance or legal. Make sure you don't do that. The biggest mistake, treating the inspection period as paperwork instead of active deal management. This is where professional agents earn trust. And it all comes back to educating them before. That's the biggest thing you'll get out of this, is to educate them before, both buyers and sellers, what to expect from an inspection report. I still don't think they know. The agent checklist, confirm effective date. Don't be surprised after you educate them that they still don't understand. Confirm effective date and they still get upset. And inspection deadline, calendar reminders before the deadline, recommend inspection options, encourage buyer attendance, order additional inspections early if needed, review report with a triage mindset. For example, they find WDOs, have a expert on that come out. They find something wrong with the roof, have a roofer come out, make an assessment and an estimate if needed. And let me tell you something. You guys know this already, just from being consumers in the world. It's just your first day in real estate. You already know this. When you have somebody come out to inspect the roof, they're going to find something, because that's what they do. That's it. And then they're going to give you an estimate, because that's what they do. They look at that as an opportunity to get work. We all know that when we call them out, but that's pretty much what's going to happen. Discuss insurance, lender, title concerns. Choose repair, credit, price, cancel strategy, put agreements in writing, and confirm deadline protection in the next steps. Guys, deadline protection is a big deal. I've seen you guys go back and forth. We were negotiating and now they want to keep our deposit. You should have extended it. I mean, you've got an argument. You got an argument, you probably win, but you're probably going to end up splitting the deposit or something, because it's not enough to find over in court. Okay, simple system. Inspect early, review clearly, negotiate strategically, document everything. All right, in summary, inspection period rewards the agent who is organized, calm, and clear. Great agents do not just send the report. They help clients understand risk, preserve options, negotiate intelligently, and keep the transaction moving. And again, if I had one thing to say to sum this whole thing up, is educate your buyers and sellers on what to expect from this and how to respond, and keep emotions out of it. You're a professional. That's your job, right? So you guys have any questions on this? Any questions, comments? I also sent it to you, as you know. I started doing that on any of them that you guys might need to go back to later and check. So I sent you this slideshow in your email that you got. If you're here, you got that email. So you guys can reference it anytime you need to. All right. I had talked to a couple of you about getting some personal time with me. And I sent a email to plan this with two of you, and there was a third one, and I missed you. I have lost your email. I don't remember who it was. Marissa Bell and Omima are two of them, and I don't know who the third was. If you are in here right now, please let me know. Or if you're interested in doing this, and what this is going to be is, I guess I'm just going to do a little bit of coaching. We're going to go over your options for leads and stuff like that. You are going to have a little bit of homework because we're going to have to. I need to know about you. I need to know what your habits are and stuff like that, and you need to know what your habits are. So we're going to do that Monday afternoon. If I got room for maybe one or two more people, one obviously because I already promised somebody. I don't remember who it was last week in here. And if somebody else wants to join, let me know. Okay. Is this applicable to VA buyer inspection? Of course, all of it is applicable to VA buyer inspection. VA needs stuff done. So what the government loans, any of these government-backed loans, they don't let you do is close on a house that is not perfect. Well, I say perfect, very livable. It can have cosmetic things, but no general repairs. You can't agree to take credits for FHA to fix the air conditioner, okay? Because if it's not running right, the government doesn't want you living there. They won't agree to this thing at all. They don't know for sure that you'll ever fix the air conditioner or anything else. So they want it operating perfectly when you get the house. So they won't let you close. So two things we've talked about before, why sellers don't like FHA and VA. Let me rephrase that. Sellers don't know anything about FHA and VA. Why agents like myself will educate them on FHA and VA and what the difference is because FHA and VA have their own inspections, and that stays with I'm sorry, not for inspection, but for the appraisal. That's appraisal stays with the property for 6 months, only for FHA VA deals. If you go to a conventional deal after that, they don't care about that. They'll never see that. But if you do if I have an FHA deal and it doesn't appraise or it falls apart for any reason, that appraisal stays with the property for 6 months. So I can't just go hope to get lucky on my next one. That's one thing. And the other thing is you cannot agree to credits. You've got to make all the repairs. You can still do other credits. You can do credits for look, we're going to replace something else in the house and that's what they want. And you can agree to that. But the repairs that are general repairs need to be made before the closing. Cosmetic repairs, they can be made after. Does anyone want to prospect lead and show home? Oh, good for you, Tammy. All right, wonderful. Any other questions about that or anything else? Yes, Tammy in Orlando.
A couple of weeks ago, you brought up a form, and it was regarding, I think if there's like excess closing or excess seller concession, and it, I don't remember what that was, but I have somebody asking for like 6% closing costs, which is going to be like $78,000, and he's also wants carpet and paint, but he really needs the closing cost. So was there a way if you had extra money that it goes, how did that work? Or what was that form?
I'm going to have to find it for you. I know.
And my lawn service comes every Wednesday at this time. So if you hear anything, my lawn service is out there like mowing away.
Yeah, I have a housekeeper who last week said, I can only come Wednesday morning. I'm like, well, we got to skip. Let's do this. I'm trying to find the form. There is a form for it. And yes,
there isn't, or there is.
There is.
And I didn't understand how it really worked or where the money went. How that happened.
Well, the money goes to the buyer, but there's either the buyer or the buyer's agent, depending on what you have to do this. But it's all it does is it allows the money to be collected outside of closing. They agree to collect the money outside of closing, and I could not have a less of an idea of where to do this. Concessions. Oh, here we go. But this is related to the buyer's broker. I found it first try. I think it's coming up right now. Okay, here we go. I don't know that this resolves that. It can't be done except for you. I don't think what you're asking can be done.
I mean, I think I can get extra money, like they can sign something that gives me, like, if, if there's 20,000 left, it happened to me in the port before where there was like 3,000 extra dollars. And if this lender didn't allocate it to something, then, actually, though, my lender said that he could use that money. Even if there was leftover, he could buy down the rate. So maybe I wouldn't. I was just kind of curious what
This is
that
the
was.
form. Yeah, I think that's your step. This is the form for the commission if it's extra, but it's not.
Right.
He's not doing a concession for that.
Yeah,
right?
but I was wondering if there's so much money left over, if there's any way it can go to the buyer through another means. I wasn't sure if that's something.
Yeah, that's called mortgage fraud, and I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
No, it can't.
Well, I didn't know. I couldn't remember what the form was pertaining
As long
to.
as the lender's on board, that's all you need. So the lender is the one that decides that. So that's what keeps you out of mortgage fraud. If they say, "I'll write you a $15,000 check outside closing," that's mortgage fraud.
Yeah, correct.
The mortgage company has to know about everything.
Exactly.
If you're in the sound of my voice, I don't care if you're driving, whatever. Mortgage company has to know about everything. So any money changing hands, they have to know about. Otherwise, it's
right.
So
okay.
You're in good. So you probably have a seller's. This is another reason to have that 6%, 3% on your listing agreement. If you have a seller's broker to buyer's broker, that does not count for your concession. So that's good, right?
Right.
It's not the seller conceding to seller's not paying it, which counts as a concession. That's another reason. If you want deals to go through and you're on the listing side, fight for the 6-3. Couple of reasons for that. This is one of them that I had never even thought about, but it's a very true thing. And then another one is if you stumble onto the buyer, you get both sides. If you have that 3%, and then we'll decide what to pay the buyer's agent later. Good luck with that seller trying to get another 3%, right? So this is what this does. This allows that. So what you have is perfect. If the lender can find other ways to use it for the buyer, then they can just do a regular old concession. That's great, and the lender will work all that out. The problem here is when you are getting concession. Obviously, you want the big concession for repairs to go directly to your. Hold on, I gotta mute somebody. You want the big concession for repairs to go straight to your client. But if they were doing this where the seller was conceding to the buyer to pay you, you would use this form.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
and
the balance of the credit will be paid directly to buyer's broker. So that's it. That doesn't apply. This doesn't apply to your situation, but that's what it's for.
Right. Yeah. Okay. One other question. Does FRI, when you guys lease, do you just get a deposit and first month's rent, or do you do deposit first and last?
We do deposit and first.
Okay.
I don't know why. I'm not. I just happen to know that. I wouldn't normally answer questions about that, but I know that's what they do.
Is it too much to ask if they do first and last and a deposit?
It's a negotiation. Anything you can ask for, whatever you want.
Yeah. Ask for it, Tammy. I've gotten it.
Okay.
Yeah. And what that prevents also is what you see so many times of a tenant saying, "Oh, they got my security, but I just won't pay rent my last month." And it's true. By the time they evict you, they're not going to bother evicting you because you'll be gone anyway. So pretty much they just take it on the chin, and it's not legal, but most people aren't going to sue you for it. So get first, last. That's great. Stella.
Hello. I have a few questions. I just went into contract, and the buyer's agent included with the offer package an affiliated business sales disclosure. It's a document for both the buyer and the sellers, most of them pertaining to the buyer, about informing them that they can do a building inspection, termite, septic, mold, and all that. But it has one item. It says seller's disclosure, and it says that the seller will provide a property disclosure statement within 48 hours. And then they have 48 hours to get out of contract if they're not satisfied with the document. However, I did not include it with, I accepted the offer, but I didn't have my seller sign this document, because it's leased and she doesn't know the exact you know, condition of the house. As her knowledge, everything is in working conditions, but you never know. It's been leased for many years. So I didn't include it, and I sent it back and I said, here's the executed contract without that page. And to be honest, I was traveling and forgot to mention it to him when I sent it back, and I never said anything. My question is, will this be an issue? Or
No,
that I
you
didn't mention it to him that,
don't you ever sign and never have your client sign any other company's form. It's not a state form. It's not anything. And besides, you know, they have 48 hours to supply. You have 40 hours to supply it. They had 48 hours to reject or accept or whatever. That's all during their inspection period anyway. The whole thing's pointless. And they already know there's no. You've already talked to them about there not being a seller's property disclosure, right?
no.
Okay,
No,
well, there's not one. And so you're not signing that. And if they didn't notice, that's fine too. And they're going forward like.
Should I mention it now? Like,
Nope.
he has
No,
scheduled.
don't mention it. It's assumed. I would never mention. I would never show it to my seller. I'm not signing. I'm not having them sign anything that's another brokerage's proprietary form, unless
Okay.
it's unless it's an important part of the deal, but it's not. There isn't even an inspection. There isn't even a property disclosure. So no.
Okay. And another question is, my leasing agreement, just want to make sure that I did it correctly, because it's the first time that I did it right. It says that the seller is not offering compensation upfront. So I put 0 for the buyer's agent, but then it states that she's willing if it's included with the offer. So when we did the compensation agreement with the buyer's agent, we put that it was going from the seller, not from the seller's broker.
That's correct.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Good. Yeah. It's from seller's broker when you have like a 6.3 or 5, 2.5, whatever. That's when it's from seller's broker. I wouldn't mind going back to that first question. I wouldn't mind you telling them, you guys know there's no seller's property disclosure, and go ahead and tell them we're never occupied the property and there's no seller's property disclosure. I would just say that in an email to them or text or whatever and be done with it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Right.
Thank you.
Have they already, how long has this been going on? Have they already made their escrow?
Yeah, they did she made the deposit yesterday, but I haven't heard back from the agent, which is weird.
That's okay. I don't think that's weird at all. I know realtors. That's not weird at all. It's pretty common realtor.
I
So-
texted him because I need to there's a cat and a dog in the properties, and I need to coordinate for the inspection to put them somewhere. And the inspection period is 7 days, and he hasn't said anything about that appointment.
Yeah, he's not a good realtor. Or he's not one that's paying attention. I mean, I don't want to categorize the guy from just what I've heard, but he's not paying attention. You should never accept a contract back. So the reason I ask that is they're going forward with this contract. What I don't want them to do, Stella, is to come back and say, oh, well, we never had a full contract. You tricked me. You didn't fill out this. First of all, you review everything that comes back. Hopefully you look at every page of the contract when it comes back to you. And I'm not talking about like page 7 of the contract wasn't included because they scanned it or whatever and it didn't go. I'm talking about like an important separate part. So he's not paying attention. But the most important part is that they're going forward like they're completely under contract. So they're completely under contract.
Yeah. Title already got the deposit, and I spoke to the lender just now, and he's working on the file. So.
Well, okay. I just want to educate you guys. If you're the buyer's agent and something like this happens, they don't sign all the papers you send them. They don't sign an important addendum of some type for you, which an affiliated business disclosure is an in-house document for you and your clients, for our brokerage and your clients, not for other people to sign, which is ridiculous that they would even have that. But but once someone starts going forward like it's a full contract, then they've accepted whatever that is. You have to let people know immediately if you get something back and it's not completely signed, or they maybe sometimes they send it back and the agent honestly just missed to have them sign something, like a lead-based paint addendum or something like that, and it just got missed out, or the agent themselves didn't sign it like they're supposed to, or whatever the situation, like an FHA addendum or something like that. So whatever that happens, when you see it, report. Sometimes nobody ever sees it. Deals close with signatures missing and nothing ever gets signed. But if you start going forward with it, you've accepted it. Okay, you can't come back later and say that. Like I tell you guys all the time, I've had sellers try to get out of deals because the buyer, oh, it looks like the buyer didn't even apply for a loan for 5 days like they were supposed to. Well, that time to say that was 5 days after the contract, wasn't? It's not now. So you can't go back and say, oh, they didn't do this right. That's fine, right? They didn't accept it by the acceptance date on page 1. So this deal should have never been under contract. No, you accepted it later. You went and made your escrow. You did this, you did that. We've all been going back and forth with insurance and inspections and appraisals and everything else. You can't go back before that and say they were in default before. You're going forward with it, you're fine. So my point being, they've made escrow, they're scheduling stuff or not scheduling stuff, which makes me think he's not paying attention. And so you're fine. And you never have to sign someone's inspect, but you have to sign anything that someone says, I need this signed if you want to go forward with that deal. Like we have people ask, it says on MLS, the seller will only take an as-is contract. Well, that's fine. That's the seller's choice. If we presented a full price standard contract, they didn't take it. They don't have to. They don't have to. They don't even have to specify beforehand. They can just say, we're not taking that contract. So go ahead. You had something else.
Thanks.
No, I thought you had something else to ask. I thought.
Oh, no. It was the compensation.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, you did the right one. That's from seller. If he didn't do 10A, which is seller's broker to buyer's broker, that's where they put the 3% or whatever. If you didn't do 10A, then it's always going to be seller to buyer, to buyer's broker. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right, guys. Let me know if somebody else wanted to go to that meeting on Monday. I don't remember who it was, and I apologize. But somebody else wants to go to that meeting on Monday, let me know. And it's at 2:00 at the office on University, the headquarters. So if you want to go, let me know. Otherwise, you guys have a great week, great weekend. Go get them. Great weekend, great week. It's only Wednesday. Go get them. You guys are doing great. Another big month last month, our biggest one in probably a couple of years. So you guys are doing deals, and I love it. So keep them coming. Bye, guys. Take care.